just like that. And I overheard an underwriter, yelling at one of the file clerks. He says, I've been waiting for 3 weeks. I've asked you 5 times. What's the matter with you? And I go, oh. And it just kind of hit my radar because it distracted my thinking. And I looked at the person as they went by, and they just kind of went by going, what goes around comes around. And that was their way of addressing that little situation. So interesting little life lesson. It really it will pay off. It's doing the right thing, and it's so simple. It's just such a simple thing to do. Okay, so now my father starts to talk to me about coming and joining him. First time he asks, no thanks, I'm doing fine, I'm on the management fast track, I got 80% of my master's down, I'm good, thank you, but no thank you. The third time he asked, he went for the juggler. He knows his son, he said, look, I'm talking about food on your mother's table. Gee, you want this back, or could I put it over my fireplace? So I guess I'm going to go work for Burns, Brooks, McNeil. Best thing I ever did. It took my world and understanding of insurance on the corporate side and expanded it to the independent agency side, where one company looks at an account and has a certain appetite. In the independent agency world, everything's insurable by somebody. Lloyd's of London, the people that insure a pianist's fingers, somebody's smile. I mean, everything's insurable by somebody. And it really broadened my world. Now, I came into the independent agency system. It was about 20 people, about 11 million in annual sales at the time. And I was 25 years, the youngest by 25 years, and the SOB, son of the boss. I worked and lived under a microscope, and they looked at me to see if I had the work ethic, because many second generations are silver spooners. Life was handed to them, life was easy, and they don't know how to work. They also have an attitude. They think they're above other people, and they're not willing to roll up their sleeves and work. They also don't bother to even go to college, some of them. And not only did I do that, I had most of my CPCU, and I had home office, underwriting, and claims background. So by the time I came there, I actually had something to bring to the table. And I hit the ground at a fast walk and gradually earned the respect of the employees as I would help them and as the company grew and evolved. And one department would get into trouble, and I would offer to go in and try to fix it. I would fix it, and then I'd say, okay, now it's mine. So I took over commercial lines first, and then claims second. That was a natural. And then personal lines, and then accounting. And sales I helped from afar. My father's partner was in charge of that, and didn't really allow me to do too much over there, but the guys would call me anyway, and so I would help them whenever I could. So gradually, over 17 years, I was the de facto COO, if you will. And when it came time to start buying the company, it was kind of a natural evolution, and people were fine with it. I only lost one employee, and many times when there's a change in ownership, you lose 10 to 15%. There was only one employee because she wanted to try going out on her own. Well, that's okay. She did not make it, but can't deny her for trying. I respect that she had the guts to try. We had a written buy-sell contract, and it should have been a 6-month process. Straightforward, clean cut, everything was already pre-agreed to, except he was not a Christian. And when my father agreed to be a partner with him, he spiritually, God hadn't really gotten a hold of his heart. And that happened when I was about 18, when God started really reeling in my father. And so my father regretted being basically stuck and unequally yoked with this unbelieving partner. And I got to see firsthand the toll that it took on him mentally, emotionally, physically, and very, very debilitating. And all the things that can happen in that situation did happen and more. And I also lived under that for 17 years. And I should have been his best friend because I was his retirement insurance, basically. I was going to keep the business going and make sure he got paid. He should have done everything possible to help me be successful. I was viewed as the problem. Because I was there, he couldn't sell it for the highest dollar to somebody else. So he did everything possible to undermine me and try to not make that happen and make me quit. Not an easy way to work. Adversity, whether it's economic adversity, whether it's stress adversity. In the claims department, I had a guy that sat on my work to make himself look better because he was on the way out and pretended that my work was his, things like that. All these things can potentially happen to you. But adversity, and what does adversity do? Adversity can crush you, it can bruise you, or it can make you stronger if you believe that God is all-knowing and omniscient, and He's allowed it in your life for a reason. And you can use it to make you stronger, or you can let it crush you. And not always, but most of the time, I kept my eyes up and let my faith carry me through those very, very difficult times. And it has made me stronger. It's made me better. It's strengthened my faith and prepared me during those 4 years for the last 4 years with the economic crisis. Now, during those 4 years during the buy-sell, we went through almost 7 figures in legal costs and accounting costs. None of that should have been spent. And it left the company that much less cash to work with. And if I didn't have my claims background, there's no way I could have gotten through that. In fact, one ping pong session, as I call it, was 5 attorneys versus me. And I prevailed. And my father just sat there going like this. And if I hadn't had that legal background, that litigation specialist background, I would have never had the wherewithal and the conviction and the alacrity to do that. And as I look back over my life, you know, the work ethic and striving for excellence, even as a young boy, things were hard, but God had a plan. And going into the home office and the stress and realizing it's not where I want to be, but learning how to operate at that level. Then going down to national accounts claims and learning that whole arena. And then going into underwriting, which is an underwriter, for those who don't know, evaluates a business and determines what coverage, property liability, auto, workers' comp, umbrella, to offer and under what terms. What exclusions should I apply, what endorsements should I apply, what price should I charge. All that allowed me to be able to come into the agency as a commercial marketing person. I dealt with underwriters at the company, the job I just did. And because I'd done claims and I'd already done underwriting, I knew what they needed. It allowed me to be effective at that job and earn the respect and have the credibility with the other employees, which then allowed me to expand and take over the different departments and so forth. As I look back, it's miraculous, really, how one led to another. But it all started because I made a good decision not to chase the money. I went for a position that would lead me ultimately to where I wanted to be, and that was an entrepreneur. I didn't go for the money. And I prayed a lot, and I've tried to live my faith, and God has honored that, all right? The Lord upholds the righteous. And as I look back, I really couldn't add anything to the training necessary to get to where I was, to be able to be effective in what I do. In the last 4 years, when you've read about layoffs, downsizings, economy tanking, housing down 33%, we've been very, very fortunate. And in talking with the president of Hanover 2 weeks ago, he told me the last 4 years have been the hardest ever for independent insurance agents. Over 4,000 independent agencies went out of business in the first 3 years. In Connecticut, which was hit very, very hard, in 15 months, 15,000 businesses folded. We're the most highly taxed state. We have the most debt per capita of any state in the country. You want to talk about adverse conditions, and I just took on millions in debt to buy this company. And the financials were not where they should be, and we just blew through a whole bunch of money. Tough. But by God's grace, a lot of hard work, showing by example, we have grown each of the last 4 years. We have been profitable each of the last 4 years, not by a lot, but we stayed in the black. There have been no layoffs, and I've hired 11 people. A very rare story. And that enabled me to refinance some debt last year with a banker who I met on the golf course. First time I joined a 9-hole league. Business can be done on the golf course. And I was able to refinance a couple $1 million and drop my interest rate down to 3.8% fixed in this environment with a going rate 6.5%. That's a God thing. It's also a track record. And when they saw how we had survived the last few years prior to that, I said, nobody's doing that. And God continues to bless. The last 2 people I hired at the end of January, one came from a top 100 independent insurance agency in the country. There are 32,000 independent agents in the country. This is a top 100. And he wasn't a mail clerk. He was the executive vice president, the number 2 person in this company, about $120 million in annual sales. He now runs my commercial department. And then I hired the former branch manager for CNA, another insurance company, who had been a vice president at 2 national brokers. I'm talking like stocks on the stock exchange. And he has heard through the grapevine what's happening at Burns, Brooks, and McNeil. According to him, he handled the top 85 agents in the state of Connecticut. He said, nobody's profitable, nobody's growing, everybody's laying off, and nobody's hiring or acquiring. You're doing all of those things? That's the kind of organization I want to be part of. And his specialty is $500,000 accounts and up. And God is continuing to bless a lifetime of giving him the credit, living according to his principles, living your faith. Prior to my buying the agency, Christianity was discouraged in my company. Since then, Christian emails to inspire and uplift are freely encouraged. I had an employee come to me, been with us 25 years, breast cancer. And I prayed with her in my office, right there. New employees, part of our tradition that I started 20 years ago, have to lead Christmas carols. Now, the former partner used to he would leave the room, actually. But that's okay. We got God's message out there in the real Christmas carols. I'm not talking about Frosty the Snowman. And we only do 3 or 4, 2 or 3 stanzas each. But my whole company knows where I'm coming from. They hear that message regularly. When I do an employee appreciation event in April, and I handed out $40,000 in bonuses and extra commissions after giving a review of how the last year went, and said thank you to each and every one, and went through every department and talked about their accomplishments over the year, and gave them a nice dinner, swordfish and prime rib, and then gave them the afternoon off. That's what we do. We pray before the meeting, and Christianity is in the workplace. Now, I live in a very secular state. There's not a lot of Christian schools, and there's only really one, the master's school, where my daughters go for K through 12. I'm not aware of really any solid Christian colleges. And so to do that in that environment is risky. Absolutely is. I try to be very respectful of everybody's opinions and thoughts, but I still do it in faith. Now, do I have employment practices liability, which protects me against discrimination and discrimination for religious affiliation and so forth? Absolutely.